I count TK as a mentor, and so that's why I root for the Patriots, because he's instilled in me that life is too short to root for losers. Bruce, I have to disagree with your point about you disagree with me. That means you're a hater, because when I wear this, that's usually what it means, is that people disagree with me because they're haters. No, I'm appreciative of the opportunity to kind of talk about an area of ministry that I'm passionate about, was what Steve asked me to do. And I kind of get nervous sometimes when I'm asked to share these things, because it kind of makes it maybe seem like I know what I'm doing. And I don't. In a sense, because the reason why my ministry personally works is because I have adult leaders that know more than I do. For instance, I have TK who taught me at the National Institute, and then I have, we joke with him as the 100-year veteran being Mike Fisher, who's been on the youth staff at Community Grace for 20 to 30 years, like it just a veteran. And then I'm tasked with being there for 4 years and leading these guys. And it's cool though, because having the right adults, it doesn't matter how many times they've been in ministry or how many years they've been in ministry, having the right adults can make or break your youth ministry. If you have more than one kid that you're pouring into, you need adults with you. Because our jobs as youth leaders, and even though if you're not the main youth leader, your task too is to also help your youth, your main youth leader, but also to bring others along as well, other adults. Because if there's one thing that needs to change, it's the view that I can't do youth ministry, or youth ministry is just where you go if you have nothing else to do. Students need to see that following Jesus works, and they're going to see that through adults. Because they know that we've already gone through life, and so when they see that we're still following Jesus and we get to walk alongside of them, that changes the whole landscape. So having the right adults can do that. One phrase that I instill in our youth staff members is that you want to be a complement to the home, not a substitute for the home. And we've heard different variations of this, of making sure that we're not overriding what the parents say. But I've found that I get a lot of feedback from parents that say, thank you for this youth staff and instilling this youth staff, because they're walking alongside of my student. And one of the students that my wife mentors, she came to my wife and asked her about some advice, and I guess she was like, well, yeah, I had talked to my mom about this, and I just want to know your side. And my wife told her the exact same thing that her mom told her. And when my wife and this mom were talking, she's like, that's what I told her, and that's the point. Because I don't know what it is, but students are always going to listen to anybody else but their parents. So that's why it's important that you be, as leaders, and the people you recruit know to be on the same page as the parents. I say the more adults, the better. I know you'll talk to some strategists and all that they'll say this is, you want 1 to 3 and you want 5 to... I have as many that want to work with me. I do like to have a 2 to 1, 2 adults to 1 student, because there's going to be different opinions, and it's always good for students to have to process different information. For instance, last night while I was sitting at dinner, I had a student texting me. He wants to tell this girl that he likes her, and another leader said to just go ahead and tell her, because she's from Pennsylvania and she's going to be coming to Grace College in the fall. And I said, well, why do you need to tell her? Why are you rushing it? And so that there's those competing ideas, that what the other leader said wasn't wrong by any means, and I didn't undermine, but I said, have you ever thought about this? And it helps them make their own decisions. So the more adults that you have, the better, speaking into those students' lives. One big thing that always kind of ruffles me is when I hear of small group leaders, or even youth pastors, that it's all about the lesson and there's no relationship. And don't hear me say that that we don't teach our students doctrine, we don't teach our students theology, because that's important and we need to. But if you're speaking, they've already heard a 15 to 20 minute lesson. They don't need another 15 to 20 minute lesson. That's school, and they don't like school. We have to be different than school. So you're there to facilitate. Your leaders, your leaders should be there to facilitate and to keep the other kids from, getting too far and then clashing with each other later, right? If you are, you want to give them a framework. of this is how, and I tell my leaders this, and they're really grasping it, and I love it. I say there's not one right way to lead a small group. You can lead it my way, and sometimes I walk by some of my other small groups and I cringe at how they're leading their small groups, but it's just because it's not the way I would do it. They're not outside of my framework and where I want them to go. I say this is where we want to go. We want them to be solid in their faith, that when they graduate, they know what they believe and they know why they believe it. How you get them there, you're going to know them better than I do. You do it however you need to. And they stick within that framework. Now, some of them go this way and I go this way, and that's fine. But work within that framework and clearly distinguish what that framework is so that they don't define it for you, because then you could have a big mess on your hands. Be picky with who you allow to work with your students. This is always a hard one, because I have people who say, well, I want to really work with youth. And so then I take them out to lunch and I'll talk with them and figure out exactly where their heartbeat is. And sometimes it's just they want to be involved, which is fine. And sometimes they'll work well with it. But then other times they're not going to be a good fit. The important thing is that you fit them in somewhere at your church, but don't just let them work with students because they feel like they want to. There's a particular mold that your students need. And if that person doesn't fit it, don't be afraid to say, I don't think youth ministry is good. Maybe let's try children's, help them. Whether you're the main youth leader, whether you're another youth leader who's recruiting, and you know this person, be like, I don't think you want to talk to whoever your youth leader is, main youth leader, about being youth minister. I think you'd fit well with children. Well, you want to get them plugged in. We want people involved, but you also want to be picky. I had a youth staff member who is no longer a youth staff member because they moved. But we were out canvassing. We were helping the children's ministry get ready for VBS. And word got back to me that this youth staff member was saying in front of the students that this whole canvassing and going door to door thing wasn't for him. And he didn't like it. I was like, well, that's a problem, because that's how we do ministry. Like in our small rural town, that's how we do ministry. And so the great thing was that the Lord answered prayer and they moved, so I never actually had to confront him about this. So, the Lord answered prayer there, and I just let it go. But those are the kind of things where if I would have had and he was one that came in with me when I took over the job. That's one of those ones where I would have figured out as I met with him and I talked with him first, you're not going to be a good fit for our youth ministry, but there's definitely places that I would have plugged him in otherwhere. There's a reason why biblically adults are important. And I always turn to 2 Timothy 2:2 that says, you have heard me teach things that have been confirmed by many reliable witnesses. Now teach these truths to other trustworthy people who will be able to pass them on to others. Your job as you're recruiting youth leaders may end up you're pouring more into your youth leaders as they pour into your students. I make the joke that I don't know who half of my students are. And in a sense, I don't know who half of my students are. Sometimes I feel really bad because there's that student that's been coming for a while, but I've never seen them because they go right to that other adult, and that's fantastic. I have my 5 boys, my 5 junior high boys that I know when they're there. The other ones, it takes me a month to get to know their name. But there's a youth leader who knows their name, and there's then a student leader paired with that youth leader who knows their name, and they're feeling welcomed, and it doesn't matter if I know their name, which is awesome. I love it. Outside of students, having a core group of adults is important also because they give you honest feedback. We started doing a winter retreat, and it kind of took off and got bigger than ourselves right away, which is awesome, and we're trying to keep up. And the way that we're molding it is by saying, okay, what worked and what didn't? You tell me because you witnessed it. I was one of the point people behind it, so I'm not going to see everything that you're going to see on the ground. So from an event standpoint, you get honest feedback. Yeah, this made it easy. This made it hard. My youth staff is awesome because if you know, it's Wednesday, which is our day of youth group, and I'm obviously not going to be there tonight. Being able to hand that off to an adult, because you're going to need an adult there, to say, making sure this happens, I'm going to rest easy tonight knowing that the church is locked up and students are taken care of. I can rest easy. It makes life easier having those adults. They give you those honest feedback. And let's be honest, that's how I figure out how our youth group's going and where we need to go, by having those adults who are walking with our students saying, this is what I'm struggling with. We have a monthly youth staff meeting where I hear from them saying, hey, let me know what's going on in small groups. I make each one of them share about something that's either good or bad in their small groups so that I know which direction to take our youth ministry next. Because it's not about where I want to take our youth ministry. In fact, half the stuff we do, I'm like, this would not have appealed to me when I was in youth group. But this is where we need to go by you telling me where we need to go. It comes back to Proverbs 27:17. It says, iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. One of my top youth staff members, he only worked for me for a year, and he went off to med school. And he probably has the best connection with students, and he only worked for me for a year because he understood my vision, he bought into it, and he built relationally. And those students still contact him. And that's how I would say, and my final thought is that I would say the way that you judge whether you have good youth staff members is, do the students want to keep in contact with them if they were no longer on your youth staff, or are they easily forgettable? So that's my advice, kind of my ideas as far as adult youth staff. Now, granted, just to let you know, we're a church that averages about 150 to 200, so you can kind of have an idea of where we're at. Our youth program is at about 40. So ours is tailored to that number. Now, some of you have smaller and larger churches, so you have to compare and use senior pastors and other leaders to kind of help you figure out, where to go. I did, and it helps. Use all the help you can get. So that's my advice for you guys on using adults when it comes to reaching students.